This is the way Trumptopia ends. This is the way Trumptopia ends. This is the way Trumptopia ends. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. Not with a revolution, but with a retreat. Not with a second term, but with a con man's lies exposed. The Hollow Trumptopia. Inspired by The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot.
Good morning, Trumptopia. A special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. Hosted by the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's talk Trump.
Hello and namaste, friends. It is a day. It is a new day. It is a day to sigh a sigh of relief. It is a day to celebrate. But dare I say it is a day to ensure we remain vigilant. It is a day to make sure we do not stoop as low as those that have stooped before us. It is a day to look within. It is a day to open our hearts and set aside the issues. It is a day to stop yelling at each other to open your eyes and instead turn inwards and open our own hearts, for the eyes are blind no matter how open they may be if the heart is dead and shut to the world and closed to the pain and suffering of others, including those you perceive as your opposition. It's Thursday, January 21st, 2021, and it is 8:20 a.m. How fun, lots of 20s. On a fun note, before we go diving into a discussion of the amazing amount of things we could be talking about that have occurred over the last however many days it's been since I was on the air with you guys. As of the 20th, we are in an interestingly bizarre and apparently much anticipated period of 10 days, which are all palindromes. Don't take my word for it. We started with 1-20-21. That's 1-2-0-2-1. It's now 1-21-21. 1-2-1-2-1. Either direction you read it in. 1-2-2-2-1 tomorrow. 1-2-3-2-1. 1-2-4-2-1. 1-2-5, 2-6, all the way to the 29th. Someone made a nice meme. I don't know where it came from. There's a website there, but since I haven't checked it out, I'm not gonna read it out and make a mis endorsement. I'll have to dig into it. But whoever it is, thank you for the meme. It's interesting and fascinating. Does it mean anything? Who knows? Are there people making hay about it? Probably. But I thought that was interesting and cute enough and worth sharing. Before we proceed any further, I want to, as is my custom, welcome any new listeners. Hello, namaste, thank you for tuning in and joining the Almost Daily Zencast community. Brace yourselves, my show is not your grandpappy's podcast. I am not here to peddle anybody's propaganda. I am not parroting any talking points. I am speaking to you my own authentic perspective. No one's paying me to say this. The closest we come to that is the meager and humble trickle of income I get from the fact that this show is monetized, because the hustle is real, yo. I haven't worked since before 2021 even started. But that's a whole nother story. I've talked a little bit about it. Don't want to make it about me today. I'm going to wrap up my little opening things. Please be advised. I criticized Papa Bush and Baby Bush. I criticized Clinton and Hillary. I criticized Obama. And I criticized Trump. And now that the blue tyranny has taken over and is quickly working to ruin America through socialism, I assure you that I will keep a vigilant eye and criticize Biden. Why? Because presidents and all elected officials are supposed to be public servants. As such, it is up to us, the public, to hold them accountable. We are not supposed to worship them. They are not idols for us to idolize. And, as I am paraphrasing a meme I shared, Idiocracy, the movie, wasn't supposed to be a documentary. I inserted a bunch of stuff that wasn't in the meme, but it's out there, the meme I shared. It's floating on the Facebook. So much to talk about, so much to address. First things first, I wanted to share a weird programming note. I love Martin Luther King Day. It's one of my personal, days of the year that I celebrate. I don't celebrate a lot of holidays, but I celebrate that one because it is a powerful reminder of where this country has been, how far we seem to have come, and how much more work we need to do. I did not go on the air and do a Martin Luther King Day special, in part because of the concern that was expressed to me by fellow members of the people of color community. For I consider myself more a member of that than of the quote-unquote Caucasian white community. And put a pin in that. I've discussed it before. In fact, I have a very deeply personal episode about that, if you're curious. I currently can't remember the name of the title, but it's there, and it should be pretty obvious when it stands out. Because I ask, who am I supposed to be outraged? So dig that one up so you can catch up to my positioning here. So the people during a previous era, way back ye olde ancient 2020 days, there was that whole incident of Blackout Tuesday, I think it was called. There was a day when there was a bit of confusion about whether or not we were supposed to share a bunch of black squares on our Instagram and black out the internet or not. And right around that time, I say there was confusion because some people may not have caught this. And I'm not judging anybody, I'm just sharing my experience. But apparently there was a bit of a backlash from within the Black Lives Matter movement and the people of color community. Because all the black squares were just flooding the streams and there was no messaging from black voices. And I understand that. This is a dilemma. And it's a dilemma that gets explored really beautifully in Martin Luther King's own work. There's a brilliant document. There's two really beautiful documentaries. One you can't even call a documentary. It's just an archive of the raw film. I don't have the titles in front of me because I'm a big fat loser, but they're on my Facebook page, and if I get around to it, I'll get it up before I finish talking about this. But my programming note was this. I didn't do an episode that day because of something that was pointed out to me back in the early days of protesting and stuff in the middle of 2020, and that's that there are times to speak up as an ally, and there are times to stand by and let the voices of those who we want to be allies for be heard. So on Martin Luther King Day, I didn't want to be a non-black voice pontificating about Martin Luther King. There was enough of that going on. But I still want to honor his words, his legacy, and my understanding of how they apply to all of us today. So stay tuned. I will be putting that episode together in the not too distant future. So many interesting things to discuss there. So that explains why I didn't talk on Monday. I took the weekend off to brace myself and be ready to absorb all that I can absorb, to witness, to take note without judgment, both on MLK Day and, of course, the deeply anticipated Inauguration Day. And here we are, the day after, day one of what many are heralding as a return to normalcy. I want to put a pin in that, dear friends. There's an episode I've done already in the past about how the old normal wasn't really normal. I encourage you to go dig up that episode. I think it's got a cover of a bridge disappearing into a misty ravine. And of course, normal and new normal are in the title and the description. I wish I had like a menu of all the shows that I could just go bloop, 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 bloop every time I think of a reference. But I mean, I do, but it would take... Anyways, needless to say, I humbly invite you to explore the 400 plus episodes of my humble podcast that I've been producing over the last 4 years as I've raised my voice in opposition to Donald Trump. And today is a day to be grateful that, for better or worse, despite all the craziness that will continue to be caused by his words and his actions, he, the great chosen orange one, the leader of the QAnon MAGA clan, the prophesied savior, failed and is no longer in office. What this means for the Trump opposition coalition is straightforward and simple. It means a great wave of relief as we no longer have to wake up in the morning and dread what blathering madness this orange con artist has spoken from the highest seat of power in the land. So there's much joy and jubilation across the nation today, and there has been since yesterday, right? And that's all well and good, and I do not mean to judge. But I will give fair warning, dear friends. Celebrate, rejoice, return to a place of no longer living in angst and anxiety and fear of this orange monstrosity. But as you pivot from the previous era into this new moment, please, please, please be advised that, as I've tried to explain before, the normal we remember and miss was never really all that normal. And that the system, both the neutral system of governance and the corrupt system of oppression and the, I don't like the word righteous. I need a better word for the opposite of corrupt, because righteous and virtuous and true are so baggage-laden. But the opposite of the system of corruption and oppression, has its flaws too. Has its situations and issues. Dear friends on the left, we made a coalition to oppose Trump. And in that coalition, we found some unity. We must now contend with the fact that we are a coalition of various groups. I, for one, am not a blind faith leftist. And I'm not exactly a wholehearted, enthusiastic supporter of Biden for reasons that should be clear and obvious. So, we cannot just kick back and think it's all going to be awesome and cheesy peasy from now on. Too many of the critical, fact-based arguments, now I'm not saying all the arguments from the pro-Trump side were critically well thought out and fact-based, but of those critiques that do fall into that categorization, some of them are really important and worth investigating, and not just dismissing as right-wing conspiracy mumbo-jumbo. Now, there's a lot of content that must indeed be held up to the light and exposed as right-wing conspiracy theory mumbo-jumbo. But, having just said that, it must be understood that the same is true for the ideological landscape on the left. We must turn a critical eye to those we've just celebrated, supported, and helped bring into power in opposition to Trump. If we don't do that, we become the same kind of hypocrisy as the Trump base was. Because what did the Trump base do? They lived in fear and hate of Barack Obama for 8 years. And then, in an attempt to retaliate against all the perceived problems of that administration, they sold themselves to the Orange Devil and attached themselves to his self-aggrandizement and believed his lies. Guess what, folks? There are two wings on every bird. The left wing and the right wing are not mutually exclusive and completely independent separate entities from each other. They are part of one machine. And that machine has objectives and goals which it tries very hard to keep us from understanding. There's so much to discuss, friends, and so many fascinating quotes and tidbits I'd like to share with you from the last several hours. You know, the last 48 hours of stuff and statements and proclamations that have been flying all over the social medias. But let us take the opportunity to cleanse the palate, as I like to say, and tune in to our stoic and ever silent friend over there in the corner, DJ Zed, and one of his experimental remix tracks, Jump Up D&B, Endless Numberations of Figures Dancing. if I had been on the air yesterday, I would have had the pleasure of announcing that the total downloads for my podcast project had reached 20,020 downloads. It's now at 20,022. That's for the whole page. Not the page. How do I explain? If you were to visit Spreaker.com right now and look at the Almost Daily Zencast, it actually has a lower download count than that. And that's because I've restructured the project a few times and there's content that's no longer there, but the downloads and stuff are still accounted for. So, anyways. Okay. Yesterday was an epic day, a historic day, a beautiful day, and also a deeply, deeply disappointing day for a lot of people. The coalition of everyone that opposed Trump had a lot of reasons to rejoice, and there were many tears of joy shared on social media. And I applaud that. Huzzah. But the right and the coalition in favor of Trump had a lot of emotionality going on with it too. In part because of very unrealistic expectations that were set by, set of predictions and, prophecies that did not pan out yesterday. And yesterday was that penultimate day. Remember back in school how some kids were procrastinators and would just goof off all afternoon and push that book report to the last minute and then try to crash through it all right at the last moment and or just, make something up and try to kick down the road, maybe call in sick, try to get yourself some extra time. The Trump base, especially the QAnon category of the Trump base, for not everyone who supports Trump supports Q, but most everyone that supports Q seems to support Trump. They had been believing in a plan that kept predicting things, only some of which would come true. The quote, salt checks, I'm not entirely sure what that phrase means, but I have it thrown at me a few times now. The salt checks all verified. But it's easy to manufacture proof when you are the creator of the prophecies and the creator of the evidence for the proof that those prophecies are coming true. But if I may humbly point out that there was one prediction, not a Q prediction, but everybody else is pointing this out to you kind of prediction. There was one prediction that was indeed proven and verified yet again yesterday. And it's this. The assertion, the prediction, the revelation, which has been made multiple times by various people throughout history, that PSYOP manipulative conspiracy theory content is really about manipulating the fan base, the believers, manipulating people into meaningless, petty conflict, schoolyard name throwing, animosity, building frustration, ultimately resulting in hate and violence at each other, instead of uniting to focus on solving the problems that oppress us all equally. The system of oppression exists on many subtle layers. You can't really pin it down to one place, one person, one group. But that's what they want us to do. That's what tribalistic us versus them, we are righteous, they are evil programming is all about. Long before I had this podcast, long before Trump announced he was going into politics, I was deeply concerned about the obvious duopoly, echo chamber, psyop of manipulation that is clearly manipulating the American public and pitting them against one another. And selling them all the guns and ammo they would use to fight the supposedly virtuous civil war that some of them are foaming at the mouth to go fight. The American public has lived in a vice grip of pressure designed to lead people down a path of choosing to take offense at one another instead of seeing past the differences, in choosing to get entrenched in intractable conflict instead of transcending the barriers to uniting with each other. The American public has been manipulated towards this end, and that manipulation has been measurably successful. Is everybody under its spell? Obviously not. Plenty of people in American society are either staying the fuck away or actively calling it out. So I'd like to share now from the content that was flying all over social media yesterday. On the right, I'm just going to summarize. No disrespect, you guys, but most of the Trump support base was a chorus of the same talking points. Stolen election, evil satanic pedo ring, trust the plan, the storm is coming, MAGA, WAGA, WAGA acronyms, and vagaries of it's just about to happen, it's all around the corner. None of the things that were being peddled as divine prophecy came true. And we need to call that out for those of us who see it, because that really large portion of the American public is living in pain and torment. The entire Trump cult, for it is a cult of personality, and the left is not free of that kind of thing, for lack of a better turn of phrase, but we'll turn to that in a second. And this cult of personality was narcissistic in nature, right? The Trump cult of personality. Trump is a narcissist. Obvious. And always has been. It's really clear in his pattern of behavior over time. And one of the tragedies I find is that, because of all the conspiracy theory talking points, there's a lot of Trump enthusiasts that run around yelling at others about, quote, doing the research, and yet they never once spent an afternoon digging into Trump's own fact-based record of criminality. Because that entire history was dismissed outright as a Democratic hoax, and they believed it. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading a lot of that content directly, because we've all seen it, we've all heard it. And not too much of it was very original. No offense, you guys, over there on the Trump side. But most of your screaming and yelling and postings of things yesterday was driven by the talking points you've been fed for the last 4 years. And the same can be said about a lot of the statements made on the left. But there's a lot of people that were part of the anti-Trump coalition, which may or may not be left-leaning, but were there in opposition to Trump, in coalition with everybody else. And And so I don't pretend to know the details of everyone's exact political leanings about what I'm going to read. Some of these people may be Trump supporters. But I'm going to anonymously read several statements made over the last 48 hours. I've asked everybody involved for their permission. If I'm reading your words here and you're listening, hi, thanks for tuning in. And you know which ones are yours. And sorry, I've anonymized everybody to just not deal with the potentiality of being accused of trolling individuals. I'm not. I'm trying to get at the ideas that are, driving their message. What's going on in these messages that were posted? At the very top, the very first one is a blurb, a comment, a post that someone created yesterday that opens up with, "All right, who wants healing? Can the politicians do it? No. That is the job for everyday people." I'm going to insert here a few thoughts. We are society, but we blame society. But we are society. It's really easy to point fingers and blame political parties and blame politicians and us versus themify the whole relationship. But they are people too. They are us. My acquaintance here goes on to say, let me recap. Who wants healing? Can the politicians do it? No. That is a job for everyday people. You, in all caps. Stop using words like, quote, libtard, quote, Nazi, quote, snowflake, quote, commie, or any other personal attacks in your online debates. Huzzah, 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 my friend. Many of us have been speaking to this for a very long time. Schoolyard insults, name-calling, petty hate speech, in and of itself achieves nothing besides self-aggrandizement for the issuer of such language. It makes that person temporarily feel superior to whoever they are insulting or trying to insult. And as my acquaintance proceeds to then point out, quote, firstly, they do nothing to support your argument. I want to really sort of pound that point in. Calling people anything tards, Q-tards, libtards, Trump-tards, achieves nothing in terms of communicating and establishing intellectual consensus, in terms of solving the problems that we all are oppressed by. Calling each other bullshit names does nothing. Now, am I some sort of prude? I'm obviously not reading my post right now. My friend's post right now. I'm interjecting. Am I a prude? No. Am I a language Nazi? No. I think that's the only way in which, calling someone a Nazi makes sense and is, tolerable. Literally just blindly calling someone a Nazi, which both sides have done to each other for decades. I can't think of a president that wasn't called a Nazi or somehow, compared to Hitler by the opposition in the entire time I've been stuck here on this planet dirt with you guys. Not one. Everybody. From Reagan on, from Nixon. Maybe Ford didn't get called a Nazi. He might not. But from Nixon on down, I have seen the opposition go, he's such a fucking Nazi, he's as bad as Hitler. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Predictive programming, anyone? Words matter, my friends. So, I'm not a prude. Use foul language all the fuck you want. Fuck this, fuck that. Telling people to fuck off is fine. There's a line. Oh, I was thinking about this last night right before I fell asleep. I don't think I wrote it down. Fuck off? Not hate speech. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. It's definitely foul language. Fucktard, hate speech. It's a subtle fine line, I do recognize, but I humbly suggest that it's one we need to build consensus around. Because despite all the griping and moaning, and this is one of the talking points from the right, that censorship and totalitarianism and oppression of my free speech, if you're spewing threats of violence, you're not exercising your free speech rights. You're being led down a path of violence, breeding violence by the ideological manipulation that has been imposed on you your entire life. All right, let us return to this passage here. So they don't, calling people names, to recap, calling people names, get it out of your lexicon. Stop doing it. It doesn't do anything to support your argument. Quote, secondly, they create the kind of anger we have been witnessing in the past decade or so as the pressure valve on this people has steadily been more strained. Thirdly, begin to emphasize rather than sympathize. That's an interesting distinction. Sympathy is a little bit down the length of my nose at you, if it gets really egoic, right? Empathy is about connecting to that other person's context, feelings, and worldview. Sympathy is pitying them, right? All right, continuing with the quote. And finally, learn to talk to people instead of at them. I would have just edited, if I was editing this for my friend before he posted it, I would say with people. Learn to talk with people instead of at them. Continuing with the quote, start trying to convince people instead of trying to humiliate them with zingers. I would have recommended a slightly different thing. Start trying to commune with people. There's a big difference between trying to get someone else to adopt your ideas and trying to build mutual understanding. Humiliation achieves none of those things. Humiliation, vis-a-vis foul, petty, insult flinging, only alienates. And finally, my friend here closes with, do unto others that which you would have them do unto you. Hello, Christian Nation. That's me interjecting. Hello, Christian Nation. Where's your Christian likeness? Where's your Christ-like behavior? Resuming with the quote, practice civility instead of division. This is a brilliant point. It is a choice. There was one of the disappointing things I saw coming out from the left was, we can't do unity now. We can't. Look at all the horrible things they did. Unity is a choice that must be exercised daily. If you're busy blaming the other side, you're just as culpable for the lack of unity as the other side, in my humble opinion. And then this statement closes with, this can be done regardless of who sits in that chair behind the big wooden desk. We are already humans. Practice being humane. Amen, brother. Powerful thoughts to contemplate, friends, and applicable to everybody on all sides of any ideological divide. QAnon, which tried to hijack the anonymous movement, which I was deeply suspicious of to begin with, even before Q showed up. QAnon has created this heightened sense of grievance, entitlement, self-righteousness, and attached all those emotions to a false model of reality that does not accurately represent what's going on in the world. That, my friends, is exactly how psychological manipulation works. Let's cleanse the palate with a little bit more musical entertainment and then come back to a few more interesting thoughts from the previous 48 hours. Understand Yet Much by DJ Zed, a Nocturnal Beats groove pad remix electronic music track for your listening pleasure. From another post I saw yesterday, which really, I think, just nailed it simply and succinctly. I quote, "I wonder how today went for all you QAnon followers. Geez, might want to rethink that one, or maybe come up with a good one to keep the faith. But eyes wide open, brothers and sisters, as the word on the street is that violent right-wing groups are also already strategizing how to convert disillusioned QAnon followers to their ranks. Be safe. Remain kind. No matter what you believe or think." End quote. Our thoughts, obviously, can be manipulated. In any direction, left, right, Green Party, Third Party, it's all riddled with neurolinguistic programming, folks. Our beliefs are dangerous. The very tool of belief is a double-edged sword that cuts every fucking way possible. Belief manifests. Choose what you believe in wisely. Reevaluate what you have believed in and choose better. The very first moment that I saw QAnon content, I went, wow, that is some neurolinguistic programming wrapped up and repackaged. That's some pre-existing old hat neurolinguistic programming that's been spruced up, repackaged, and spray painted orange. Violence is a tool of the oppression, of the oppressor. The system, as I've spoken at great length about in this show, you'll get tired of me saying this eventually if you're new and you haven't already. The system wants your violence. Now let me be clear, there's multiple systems, right? If we zoom all the way out, the system itself is a massive system of systems. So one of the problems is that it gets really confusing if we just start talking about the system. The system of oppression is the layer of corruption that is got its tentacles in all the other systems within the massive system. It wants violence. It wants human beings shooting each other and murdering each other over ideas and constructs and dogmatic declarations about how to be a good human. But when we murder each other, they profit. Who sold us the tools of butchering one another? The system did. The system peddles the fear and then sells the tools of mutilation. Why would anyone in their right mind want to give the system what it wants? And yet, here we are, laying the groundwork, rationalizing and excusing our way into deeper and deeper layers of spiraling out of control. It starts with tit-for-tat playground petty insults, and it builds into blind rage. Hate breeds with hate and produces violence. Both sides are complicit in this manipulation of the people. And that's a hard pill to swallow for everybody on both sides. For as outrageous as Trump has been, almost in spite of how obviously criminal he is on the surface, those who have attached their identity to him through blind faith did so because they were poisoned by the manipulative lies, the manipulation. I'm trying to conjugate different sentences in my head at the same time. Every base, and I mean the hardcore base, right? Not the fair weather supporters and the coalition of the offended but willing. I mean the hardcore blind faith base on any side builds their identity around the politician, attaches their identity to them, their self-worth, their sense of hope. And then that ruins everything because politicians are not supposed to be idols. And ideology, isn't that fun how those two words share so much in common? Idol, ideology, idealization. Ideology, when unchecked, when unquestioned, manipulates us into this vise grip of escalation against one another. The left right now has an opportunity to be gracious. The coalition of the Never Trumpers, right? The coalition of Trump opposition has a deep and profound opportunity to act with grace. I know everyone's exhausted, everyone's tired, everyone's burnt out on Trump and the madness issued by the base. I get it. But let this open your eyes, dear friends on the left. The right and the Trump base are as exhausted in the opposite direction. Not only did they spend 8 years, 2 terms, foaming at the mouth with their outrageous hate they were manipulated into towards Obama, for obvious reasons, but they've also just spent 4 years being whipped up into this frenzy and being outraged by everyone who opposes Trump. And they are now, as the losing side, filled with really intense emotionality. Imagine the intense level of relief that the anti-Trump opposition coalition is feeling. And understand this. There's an inverse proportional relationship to the outrage, disgust, and dismay that the pro-Trump coalition is feeling. All right. Someone shared this, and it's a quote. So, and there's a name there. I don't know who it is. I haven't looked it up. But I appreciate the content. So it isn't even the words of my acquaintance on the social media. It's the words here seem to be worth it, though. Quote, I can tell you what comes next. The left-wingers who hate Trump will now abandon their principles simply because Trump is gone and will ignore the many, many flaws in Biden-Harris. As these political puppets show their true colors, they will reflect the same behavior of the die-hard Trump supporters. They will abandon principle and defend their team at all costs. Some Trump supporters will still cling to fantasy and count down the days until 2024 or whenever, I'm inserting this here, whenever the fucking storm will supposedly is going to come. But continuing with the quote, till 2024 when Trump will likely run again. They will spend the next 4 years critical of Biden while still maintaining blind spots for the way Trump's actions mimic Biden and Obama. I gotta pause here and point this out. I have spoken of this in one way or another in real life since Reagan was in office. If you clear away the surface differences, the different forms of charismatic public speaking, the different styles and attitudes, if you strip away the ideological things that are different, if you strip away the emotional things that are different, if you strip away the surface issues that are different, the two echo chambers share a lot in common, and the political idols of each team end up doing a lot of things the same way. Continuing with the quote, the most principled will not look back and will recognize that the truth is that the government is the enemy and that the people united, the people from all across the political spectrum, is the only thing the predator class truly fears. These folk will begin to explore solutions outside the political realm. This is where I and many others will be waiting. I want to interject something here. Even this, while I kind of agree this argument is flawed, because lo and behold, here we are discovering the language of division. The truth is that the government is the enemy. But what is the government? Really? The institutions? Is that the government? The policies? Is that the government? The people sitting in the chairs making the speeches? Is that the government? And who are they? Are they robots? Are they lizard people? Are they aliens? Are they satanic, blood-drinking pedo traffickers? Odds are they're just people like you and me. And this is something that the conspiracy theory realm has got to contend with. What if? And there's an irony here, not to stray from this other quote here, but conspiracy theory content peddles the accusation that everyone has been manipulated by government, by education, by media. But they never stop to consider that they themselves may have been manipulated by conspiracy theory content. And anyone looking from the outside goes, you guys, y'all being manipulated by conspiracy theory content is automatically shunned because it is verboten to question the conspiracy theory content. And that should make you question the conspiracy theory content, my friends. All right, resuming with the quote. Whatever happens with the rest of today, I pray that no violence will come and that instead people will recognize that all presidents are puppets. And Trump was no exception. Interjection, I have been saying that since Ronald Reagan was in office. I've been saying that since Trump rode down the golden escalator. I'm not saying that to say I'm special. Right? I'm not special. I'm just not bound up in the dogma and ideology and us versus themification of any political party. Our answers, to resume with the quote, our answers are not found in men or women who serve in political theater. Our answers are in the bonds we are building in our communities. Let's use today as a reminder that we can build the world we know is possible by rejecting the political charade and investing in ourselves. Remove yourself from the control grid. Amen to that part. I want to add something that will blow a lot of people's minds. The reason I feel comfortable, confident in the knowledge and in stating that all politicians are puppets is because we are all puppets. Don't take knee-jerk offense to that. Don't just assume that I'm crazy and don't know what I'm talking about. Consider it. You are a puppet. I am a puppet. Our friends and family, our neighbors, our heroes and villains are all puppets. To whom? To what? Not to some evil conspiracy of men and women who do horrible things. For they are puppets as well. The human species is a collection of semi-autonomous flesh, bone, and blood puppet avatars for the various aspects and facets of consciousness. Put a pin in that. We'll come back and talk to it in both in past episodes and in future episodes. We are puppets for that which we have forgotten how to commune with, the light and the dark. They both reside within us. No individual is a monolith of pure evil or pure goodness. No human endeavor is a monolith of pure light or pure dark. As the ancient saying goes, 2 wolves live within you. I've never been a super fan of wolf as like the spirit animal totem because, you know, they're predators. But let's not get hung up on that. I already had a big, long conversation with a poet about this, but the 2 wolves. and it matters which one we feed. Even that analogy is flawed, because if you only feed one wolf, the other one starves, and that's like trying to kill your ego. Right? To kill your ego is not your amigo, friends. Go kill it. That's a thing that's been trendy and marketable and popular in the spiritual community for quite some time. And yet, if you really think about it, it's self-harm. I've talked about this at great length before, and I'm sure I'll come back and talk about it again. But let me just drop the mic with this one. We're supposed to heal the ego, not kill it. We're supposed to heal the politicians, not kidnap and assassinate them. We're supposed to heal our friends and neighbors, not go to civil war against them. We're supposed to heal ourselves and each other in order to heal the human species. And that includes all of the villains and bad guys. How do we heal? That's the question of our age. I've shared my thoughts about that here and there, and I'm sure I'll come back to share my thoughts about that even more so. But let me leave you with this nugget. It's all advice and guidance. No one can tell you how to heal yourself any better than your own self. Look within. Attend to where it hurts. Forgive that which is toxic within inside you, and transmute it with love. That's a daily practice. That isn't something you knock out in an afternoon and you're done. You can pat yourself on the back and call yourself enlightened and spit angry hate speech at everybody else for not having done it. I see you, spiritual egos, wearing spirituality like a fucking badge. It's one thing to advocate for spiritual practice. It's another to wear one's spiritual practice like a gold medal and fixate on it and use it as proof that you're better than everybody else. Because that part's a lie. No one is better. No one is worse. We are all flawed human beings struggling to remember how to heal ourselves and each other. To that end, friends, I send you my love and energy, and I pray that peace, love, and grooviness blossoms in your heart. I humbly thank you for tuning in, and I ask of you only one thing, friends. Well, I guess two things. Keep listening and tell your friends. I have been your humble, eccentric, and incorrigible host, Mr. Zeppo. Until next time, remember, we have it within us to transform everything. But our beliefs get in the way. So choose what you believe in wisely. And to that end, down that path, extending that logic, you might want to consider if believing in anything at all is even worth bothering with, when we could be communing directly with one another and with reality itself.
And that is the latest madness from behind the orange wall. Thank you for listening to GMT, a special segment of of the Almost Daily Zencast. Stay woke, Trumptopia. Stay woke.
Elections cannot be stolen when the winners and the losers are all complicit in the rigging of the game.